How do you develop someone's palate?
It's really just variety. So variety in foods and flavors and textures. It's thinking about, offering savory and even bitter vegetables. Don't give up when, whether it's the first 10 tries and you're in tears because you just really want them to like avocado and for some reason they just won't do it. Maybe give it a week and come back. Social media comments and the tagging someone else that you don't even know saying, well, that's lazy or that's, it like brings me chills. Like parents are just trying their best every day.
So dope. That is so cool. That is so cool and like major that you changed all their whole game.
And Howard Schultz walks in, essentially founder of Starbucks, right? And he was like, would you like to go to Italy tomorrow? And I was like, are you serious? That was my response. It's a very risky product, right? Because in infants' health, right, their immune system, what they can tolerate.
When you're grocery shopping, like what do you want to be aware of label-wise? Like what are like, how are they tricking us? Like, what do we want to look for? Hi, welcome to the GOT MILF Podcast. I am Chelsea Skidmore, and I'm here today with my guest, Katie Thomson, who is a registered dietitian and CEO of Squarebaby. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. So just before we jump into anything, let's just do like a general mom check-in. Like, tell me how you're feeling, how your morning was, how old your kids are, and all that good stuff.
Oh my gosh. I love that question. First of all, this is the first time I've ever been asked that question. I just might cry, as mom's like, thanks for checking in on me. Things are good. Let's see. So my kids are now 12 and 15. So this morning looked like an early French press to get me going. And my younger one had a sleepover, so he's out, but he would have otherwise been making us all breakfast. And my 15-year-old's heading off to go mountain biking. So not a bad day.
That's so cute that he makes you guys breakfast. Is that, so I'm assuming, obviously food is important in your, like, I'm curious about what food is like in your home and what the relationship has been like with your kids on a personal level because of the work that you do.
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially, as a dietitian. I feel like, when you meet people at parties or on the playground or whatever it is, they kind of assume that you're going to be a freak about, so many rules and, oh, my kid's never allowed to have this or will never be, I think it's so important to just teach them about balance and balancing their plate at different ages. We've talked about different things. But really, I think in the earliest years, when they're babies, it's just variety and continuing to offer and just trying to get them, as many different foods as possible to help build their palate and help prevent picky eating. And then they go into the toddler phase and they decide because it's Tuesday, they're not going to eat blueberries. And then they're going to like double down on that for like 9 straight months.
Yeah.
Right. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's a fun battle. But yeah, my 12-year-old just became incredibly interested in cooking. He now has his own charcuterie board that says Chef Nolan. He takes cooking classes.
Oh,
he has better knives than we do. Yeah, this has been a hard thing. Like I hover over him, he kind of looks up at me. He's like, "Mom, can you not watch me with the knives? Like I know what I'm doing, but I'm just like, you're gonna chop a finger off for sure." But he does a great job. So it is really fun because he will make like prosciutto wrap scallops and he's been making breakfast sandwiches lately. So he'll, do the egg and cheese. And so we just talk a lot about like balancing your plate. Like, all right, great. You've got a breakfast sandwich. Let's put some, veggies and fruit next to it. And then as they get older, right, it's about fueling them for sports and good energy. But it is interesting how having two very different kids, their interests are different. How they eat is different. Their challenges are different. So as with all things,
Yeah.
parenting.
And speaking to, talking about balance, what is the different ways or your advice on how to communicate. I mean, obviously, like everyone is at different stages, but like, say, a
Yeah.
toddler versus a teenager, like, how are you going to present and discuss like what an ideal balanced meal would look like? And like,
Yeah,
what are the expectations?
totally. I think as soon as they can start understanding different food groups, I think balancing their plate, right? So half the plate should be fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it is protein, and a quarter of it is a starch or a grain. It's not like we need to be so prescriptive and demonize a plate that doesn't look like that. But in general, it sort of is a nice little gut check. But certainly when they're toddlers, they don't understand all the different food groups. So I think it's on us to help them provide that balance. In those earlier years, I like to talk about eating the rainbow, because if you think about all the bright, vibrant colors, and if you're getting greens and yellows and oranges, red, purple, etc., one, they're going to get the most diverse nutrients and antioxidants, but also that's going to be very focused on fruits and vegetables naturally, right? Because grains and proteins are going to fill in the the brown group real fast. So I think visually helping them understand what balance and variety looks like is key in those early years.
Yeah, and I think communication, even just being like, "Oh, do you want to try like the red one?" is going to make more sense to them at a certain stage.
Yeah,
And seem more
yeah,
attractive
totally.
and fun. Like, is there
Hmm.
specific language with like texture or colors or anything like that that you've seen to be helpful?
I think with all of those things, offering a variety from the get-go is so important. So think of the earliest bites. There's actually research around there being a flavor window, sort of an optimal time in which babies are more susceptible to liking new flavors. And even though we'll see them turn their head and spit it out 10 times before they, like it, those earliest few months are really important for offering variety. And then I think it's easy when we start getting into toddler foods and our schedules get busier and the kids walking around and play dates and all the things. I think it's easier for some of this to get away from us. But I think that making sure that they have a variety in the way we offer it, right? So even if they love carrots, making sure offer them a roasted carrot, a steamed carrot, pureed carrots, raw carrots, right? So they don't become so rigid in what they know they like, because we can see it happen so often where a kid will say, "Oh, nope, I don't like that," and they're very firm in it, but really it's because they've just gotten so accustomed to a certain way. So I think thinking about different textures, different temperatures, different ways, herbs and spices, recipes. And as parents, it's so easy to get into a rut, right? It's like
Yeah,
you
I
cook
love
the
that.
same
Like
things because you
playing
know
with
it's
the
a win.
preparation.
Yeah.
That's,
And I think too, like if you're going to have a new food or something you think might be a stretch, like asparagus or something, like, okay, this might not be a winner the first time. I think it's important to offer it alongside foods will be a winner, so that you can encourage them to try it and just say, we want to make sure you have at least one bite of this thing. Continuing to offer that thing, over and over again. But so that if they decide that this is not a battle you're going to win, and you're not going to, you're not going to win that. We don't want to make a battle, first of all, out of food. But if we offer a plate that has something they love, like spaghetti or something, with just a spear of asparagus, that's more likely going to be a win at mealtime than a half of a plate of asparagus and a couple other challenging foods that they might not recognize. So that there still can be, that win at mealtime.
and do we want to point out the spare of asparagus and be like, "Oh, what's that?" Like, or do you want to ignore it? Like, do we want to encourage? Like, what do you think is the way to go? Because I've seen so many different suggestions on Instagram, which is where I learn everything about.
Yeah, I totally love it. I know. I think back to my days. So, kids that are 12 and 15, it was totally the airplane, or like having some game out of like opening their mouth for the spoon. We had like an elevator that like, oh, second floor. Anyway, third floor, Jackson's mouth is like brings back all of these memories. But I think with each parent, like giggle, like you find what works for you, what they think is funny and playful. I think it's important not to anticipate that they're not going to like something. Because it's like, then they might think, oh, this is something that is probably going to be a challenge, or this is something most people don't like. So for example,
like feeding off your energy, you mean?
Totally. Like, oh, so we took our kids to sushi. And actually I remember my son's 5th birthday. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to go to sushi. And here we were, it was his first time, and he ordered the bento, or actually, I think we helped him order the bento box, thinking safe, have some chicken, some rice, some tempura, you can try it. And he looked at our like plate of sashimi and sushi, and it was like, can I have that? We're like, totally. And this started his love for like straight raw, sashimi and sushi. And it's so fun because they didn't think like, oh, that's supposed to be gross. That texture or that raw thing is supposed to be, I'm not supposed to like that. So I think just, having things available, offering it to them, modeling good behavior as well, right? Being an adventurous eater as a parent and enjoying food and variety is important. But yes, kiddos, regardless of, how well you do in the beginning phases, it's so easy for there to be a phase in which everything goes out the window and you're like, oh my God, you loved all this stuff yesterday.
Yeah.
Why is it a challenge today? So it's just, and that my kiddos both went through those phases. And I talked to them about palate development. So nerdy. But basically that your taste buds will change, right? And that you can teach yourself to like new foods. And I always joke that my oldest kiddo hated ice cream and popsicles and anything cold for the first like 5 years. And I was like, it's a good thing I didn't give up on ice cream and popsicles, or, like we develop your palate to enjoy those. So you can learn to like new things. Yeah.
How do you develop someone's palate?
It's really just variety. So variety in foods and flavors and textures. It's thinking about, offering savory and even bitter vegetables, so that we think about that in the purees as well, right? These earliest stages, making sure that all of the vegetables aren't drowned out by so much fruit that they can't taste the beets or taste the broccoli, right? It's great for them to get this nutrition into, to sneak things in, quote unquote, but really it's also important to make sure that they have been exposed to and learn to like earthiness and bitterness and savory flavors. So I think those earliest months, when they're really kind of developing that palate, is helpful. And then, like I said, don't give up when, whether it's the first 10 tries and you're in tears because you just really want them to like avocado and for some reason they just won't do it, maybe give it a week and come back. But also, again, when they become toddlers and have more independence and for whatever reason decide, that they're not going to like something, they're going to pick that battle, and it could last months. As a parent, just continue to offer, new foods and in various different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So my daughter, Gia, she's 2.5. And for the longest time would just like absolutely not eat any protein. Like all she would eat was, berries and fruit and pretty much and yogurt. And just, we could not get her to try any protein. I don't know what it was. She just wasn't interested. And when she goes over to her cousin's house, who are like 8 and 10, she will try stuff with them. I don't know what it is, but like something about their relationship, maybe it's like more fun. She wants what they have. So my husband and I eat steak all the time. We have been trying to get her to eat steak for months and months and months. She would never try it. Then with them, she tried it. And because they were playing this game with her when they were like, I'm not going to look like Gia, don't eat that steak. Don't eat that steak. Like, do not eat it. And then they would make it a game and she would eat it. And then we started doing that at home and now she eats it. And I'm like, this is great. Like, she's doing it with this game, but like, how long do I have to play this game for? And like, is this game harmful? And then it's like, you get in your head so much, like, I don't know. I feel like there's so much conflicting information and I want to like mess up my kids. Like, how, like, is it all okay? Like, is it just...
Well, first of all, like anything in parenting, it's so, especially now with social media, like I did have the benefit of, the internet being in a bit earlier stages and social media being in earlier stages 12 and 15 years ago, there wasn't as much, seeing how everyone else was doing it, and the blogs and everybody's an expert and this is the right way, this is the wrong way, and the shaming,
you're so lucky.
and
You are so lucky.
Social media comments and the tagging someone else that you don't even know, saying, well, that's lazy, or that's, like it like brings me chills. Like, parents are just trying their best every day, with very different situations and babies growing at, different milestones. Like, I totally remember being so hyper focused on my first son and how quickly he talked, how quickly he walked. I just felt like I looked around at playgrounds and in their little preschool, daycare settings, and you just felt like you were failing if you were 3 weeks behind another parent. And it's just like, it's so silly. Like, they're going to get there. And frankly, us stressing is not a helpful thing for them, and especially around food. I think our energy, giving ourselves some grace with all of this, but just having good energy around mealtime and having it not be a stressful thing and having it not be a fight, but also making sure that, as much as possible, trying to prevent my kid only likes plain pasta and chicken nuggets, so he's going to eat this separate thing, or he's not going to try that, or he's not like. It's very interesting to observe how I think parents can sort of prematurely make those decisions for their child, and then it's like, it becomes sort of their own talk track. But yeah, we need to give ourselves some grace in the what works for our family, what works for ourselves. Listen to your gut, and at some point, you're done with the with the games or whatever. Maybe it's like, let's make up a new game.
Yeah.
But we should just go easy on ourselves.
I know. I need that constant reminder. And just like what works for our family, just like really takes the load off. Like, my girlfriend says that a lot. And every time she says it, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, it just gives permission. I love that.
Totally.
I need to remind myself that. Well, I want to jump back a little bit and just get into your background, and how you and learn more about Squarebaby and how you got into it and what you were doing before that. Because I think you had a really interesting role initially. Not initially, before.
Before, yeah. So, so became a registered dietitian, got my master's in nutrition, really thought I would go into the clinical world. Actually, previously had wanted to be a pediatrician. So, did undergrad in pre-med. And right after I got married, ended up getting a 3-week contractor role at Starbucks. So, Kevin and I, my husband and I, were planning to move to New York for his career in advertising. I thought I would bump around to different hospitals and clinics as a dietitian. And then the Starbucks role came up, and I turned this. So the first role was to come in and crunch all the numbers and tell them every calorie, fat, protein, etc., nutrition facts for every iteration of beverages, which is like multiple of thousands. So I would sit in a back room. Oh yeah, it was like both, mind numbing, but also I was like, oh my gosh, I'm walking into the Starbucks headquarters with my latte. And
so is that creating the food labels and giving the nutritional value to stuff that they were already making?
That's right. So with a packaged food, you have to have a nutrition facts panel, right? And an ingredient statement. But like a restaurant food, obviously that was not required yet, but their CEO had committed to having that be public within a certain number of months. And so that's where they hired me to come in and create that. And that really started a conversation around the menu in general. And so after that 3-week role was completed, basically was like, hey, there's a lot more a dietitian can do, to help out, help this company, and had an opportunity to pitch to the CEO and basically identify what I thought were the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities. Trans fat was coming down the pike, nutrition labeling, all these things. And just the fact that very soon all of their nutrition information was about to be public, right? So we had 1,000-calorie frappuccinos and coffee cakes. We had, loads of trans fat and things, big, crazy long ingredient statements of our artificial flavors. So that started a 6-year career at Starbucks, really developing their first health and wellness strategy.
So dope. That is so cool. That is so cool and like major that
Yeah.
you changed all their whole game.
I was passionate. Still am a passionate person, but I think it was, it was the good thing was the leadership was really behind it too. I think they saw it both as like the right thing to do, right? Because
Mhm.
and when you're selling coffee cakes and basically milkshakes, frappuccinos are basically a milkshake. Um, People know what they're getting, right? They're buying a coffee cake and they're buying a frappuccino. This does not. I'm not here to make your frappuccino a healthy frappuccino. I'd like to make a light option and a healthier, customizable option. But I think showing them that there was a lot of things they could do strategically as a business that would actually help drive revenue and new customers. So it was healthier breakfast options like a croissant and a muffin and a donut is awesome. I don't want that every day, but a lot of people go into Starbucks every day and they want to start with a smoothie, with a parfait, with an oatmeal. So those are products that we brought to market. The egg white breakfast options, salads, and things. So I think, uh, strategically kind of showing them the business opportunity behind it, as well as and from a brand perspective, how much their customers were expecting that. So there was a lot of thoughtfulness. Starbucks is a really incredible company that does a lot of good and doesn't even tout it. So it was really kind of an interesting thing to see how much work was done to do the right thing, just for the sake of it. So
Yeah, what was that pitch meeting like? Like walking into that, like getting off the elevator, walking, like, and being like, I'm about to like pitch like a whole different, like, innovative trend.
yeah. So first of all, it was like a very rare opportunity, in which the VP at the time was very supportive of health and wellness and saw the vision of what it could be. And I won't mention any names, but my direct boss was sort of like not a believer. So that was an interesting dynamic of trying to kind of manage up and please her and like
Mhm.
keep my job. She'd be like, that's never going to work. People are not going to want that. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Okay.
There's always
But,
one, and boy, was she wrong.
um, so Norm, the VP had said, okay, our whole team has an hour with the CEO. Katie, I'm giving you 20 minutes to present health and wellness. Like, and I was in whatever way I wanted. So, okay, realize I'm like right out of grad school. I am 26. And I made a presentation board out of like one does. I don't even know if we did that in college. So I made a visual, like, one of the like trifold things, and presented, here are the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, so that I could show, right, here's what's coming down the pike. And it was both nerve wracking and so fun, right? Because it was just like, we're going to make a change. This is the right person to be talking to. And within a year or so, health and wellness became one of the 4 strategic pillars of the company. And so it really gave me this incredible opportunity to, work on marketing and new product development and be a spokesperson for the company. It was an incredible ride and a job that I mean, all the time looked around, been like, you could have hired anyone else. Like, I am young, right out of school. Like, this is amazing, right? I was
Oh,
so
did you have
grateful.
imposter syndrome, or was
Oh,
it more
still
like,
do.
oh, okay.
100%. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm like, at what point are they going to figure out that they could have hired, any like vet, bigger name dietitian? But I think I just had the energy and the creativity and was pretty entrepreneurial, I think then. Um, just kind of march my ideas around the building and get buy off and create some pretty big changes. So yeah, it was pretty cool to feel like you could, even with small changes. So for example, we nearly, or maybe we did change the milk supply in the United States because we requested that we needed to have milk from cows not treated with RBST. So
I
people
see
think
that
of it as
everywhere.
hormone-free
I have
milk,
no idea what
right?
that is.
So there's an artificial growth hormone. RBST is naturally occurring as well, which is why we have to say not treated with RBST, but basically the milk supply, the cows were treated with RBST to help increase their milk supply. Wasn't good for the cows, was great for milk production. And we, as a company, decided that we were going to require that from our suppliers because we're the number one milk supply or, supplier in or purchaser in the US. When we made that request, it changed milk supply, so that was just like a meaningful change, right? When you have that kind of scale and you make a little change, it can, make some bigger impacts. So it was a great ride.
That's incredible. So then, I mean, like, I just like can't even wrap my head around what that must have been like, and just the incredible confidence boosting, and then just like going home, like in between these like crazy days, and like being like, this is like, I mean, like I have chills. Like I can't even imagine what that period must have been like with the changes that you created.
It was pretty amazing. And actually, so I'll tell you my biggest like have the chills day at work was we were setting up a presentation in this boardroom in the CEO and Howard's boardroom with the executive team. I was not initially invited to the meeting. This is the funny thing, but I had basically set up the whole thing. Right, it was just everything you need to know about protein. They wanted a deep dive. Okay, so here I am setting up all the things, getting everyone prepared. My boss prepared to speak about it, giving her all the talking points, and Howard Schultz walks in, the essentially founder of Starbucks, right? And he's like introducing himself, and he's like, "Oh, you're Katie, or you're the nutritionist here." I said, "Yes." It's like, "So great to meet you." And he was like, "Would you like to go to Italy tomorrow?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" That was my response. He was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Uh-huh." And he was like, "Oh, and you're attending the meeting, right?" And I was like, "Uh-huh." Because I couldn't throw my boss under the bus and be like, "Well, I wasn't invited to this meeting," because that would have been awkward. And so I called my husband. I stepped out for a moment and I said, "I need you to find my passport." We had just moved and it was in the bottom of a box somewhere. I was like, "I'll tell you why when we get home, but I need you to find my passport." And the next morning I was on a private jet with Howard Schultz and a couple other executives to Italy.
What part?
We went to Bologna. It was to he writes about it in one of his books. It was actually kind of an infamous trip where they created this product called sorbetto. It's a whole other thing. It was a great idea. Remember Pinkberry, that kind of tart yogurt places? Okay.
Yeah.
Similar sort of tart yogurt product, but they were trying to think about, could we make this a health and wellness product, which is why they brought me to kind of speak on behalf of the health and wellness agenda and make sure that this, as we were developing it alongside their R&D team, that it was something nutritionally sound. But by the time it got back to the Starbucks headquarters and was given another team, it became basically like a slushie. And I was like, "I'm out." Like, you don't need me anymore. This is not, a healthy yogurt with granola toppings or a healthy.
Yeah.
So, but that was the trip.
That is incredible. That is so fun. So doing all this and working with them to start developing, at which point, or kind of what was going on internally when you were like, what was the feeling when you were like, "I want to do something for myself," and kind of like change pace
with Squarebaby?
Yeah, exactly.
So really, I thought I would never leave this job. I mean, I was learning so much. I was pushing myself. I was just having the time of my life. It was amazing. And it's just an opportunity. You just don't give up. Right. And then when I cruised the baby food aisle, so my son Jackson I was working full time. So he had a daycare, thankfully, in the headquarters in the first floor of the building. So I brought him to work with me every day. But it was still very expensive. Hearing about. It was.
Oh, really?
And they had pumping rooms. That was an interesting thing. You would go into this like kind of unmarked conference room basically, and it was like different curtain stalls of like a recliner and like a hospital grade pumping machine. And you would just like sit there and there'd be like two other gals with like, like, it's just like, that's another moment too, or TMI, but that's another moment where you're like, oh my God, I'm failing. Like they would come out after 20 minutes with like, oh my gosh, I've got 12 ounces of, breast milk. And I'm like, Mom.
Yeah. And
I
there's
got
no such thing as TMI on here. And yeah, I mean, like the pumping stress is like a whole other.
Yeah.
It's always when you need it.
Oh my God.
And then
and just feeling like so inadequate as a mother. I'm like, I can't do that. Anyway, so with Jackson, I was very full-time working and getting home at like 6 p.m. He was going to bed at 7. I felt like I had 1 hour with him. I definitely needed the convenience of store-bought food. So here I go cruising the aisle. And, at this point, like I've met so many dietitians at big companies, at the Nestle's and all of that. I know that they have nutritionists and dietitians on staff. And so, and I had not really paid attention to the baby food aisle before, but here I am cruising down the aisle and I was like, WTF, why is nobody trying harder? Why is no company with all of these dollars and all of these people, staff and science and researchers and the smartest people, why are they not trying harder? Like it was just the most, and remember, this is now 2009.
okay.
So at that point, pouches were just starting to come on the market. Plum and Happy Baby were about either just about there or about to come on the market. I think Sprouts Organics was just launching then too, as I remember giving those to my kiddo. But I thought, if I feel like this is overwhelming as a dietitian that knows how to read labels and see through BS marketing, then I can only imagine how overwhelming this is for other parents. And I wanted to make sure that he was getting enough veggies and protein each day and that he was going to grow up to be an adventurous eater, that I was offering him variety. And in the aisle, it was like just a sea of one-off products. So I didn't know how many does he need in a day and what's really in this jar or this pouch. And so that's where I really thought about this solution and how do I take away all of the guesswork of this and create a foolproof solution for parents. So that's when that fire started and I left Starbucks in 2010.
So just even like as a businesswoman and someone who just like has an idea. So, I mean, so many people like we get ideas and but it's like, we don't run with them,
Mm-hmm.
like, what is your process? Like, you're a very innovative person, you're very motivated, but you also execute, so it's like, what does that process, like, what comes up for you internally? Like your executive functioning is fire. Like, like, how, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, I see this, I like, you're like, I can do this, I can make this happen. Like, what is that internal process like for you? And like, what does that look like when you're like, I'm actually going to make this like a thing and like accomplish this within 2 years? Like, can you walk me through that part of
totally.
it?
I think part of this is, having the experience at Starbucks and seeing my ideas come to fruition and kind of giving me a little bit of validation, maybe taking a little bit of that imposter syndrome away, though it still lives with us every day. But seeing the impact you can make on a bigger scale, I think was really inspiring. But also Starbucks and Howard are very entrepreneurial. They're into like, hence the sorbetto trip. Like, let's give it a try. I think that was really inspiring to see that energy and creativity. And even though it's a really big company, they act a lot more entrepreneurial than most large companies. But really, it was about a fire that started in me that I could not put down. And I will tell you very honestly, there were times where I was like, oh my God, it'd be so much easier to be a mom who reads books for book club and shows up and plays tennis and maybe cries a little less, is a little less stressed out, or, all the things. Like, there's a lot easier paths that I could have taken for sure. And even with developing the baby food company and thinking about what I truly wanted to create, it would have been a lot easier to create, 3 pouch meals because pouches already existed. That format already existed. The how to produce them and who helps you, the manufacturing is there. Shelf stable is a much easier business to create and operate than a frozen food company, being direct to consumer versus in a grocery store, etc. So it was really about like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it right by our investors, which is our friends and family, right? So it's not like we were just given, here's millions of dollars for your great idea. Go for it. Go figure it out, right? It's like taking friends and family's money with a very specific plan and a team and everything in place. But it's no joke to take that on, right? So you have a responsibility to your customers and to your investors. But yeah, I mean, we kind of chose the hardest route all the way around because we knew it was the right way to go. So for example, we raised $500,000 to start. We could have gone straight to a manufacturer and said, okay, with $500,000, we can, create our first few products. Maybe we can afford to do 3, right? But then I'm like, well, we haven't really proven out this concept yet. We haven't fine-tuned the flavors yet. We don't know what people's favorites are yet. And frankly, 3 flavors is just not a solution for parents. That's a great option. But if I want to be a direct-to-consumer, subscription-based company and a true solution for parents, I wanted to have options for a 6-month-old, an 8-month-old, a vegetarian, a vegan, allergen-free, allergen introduction. And that meant we started in a commercial kitchen. So Kendall, my amazing co-founder and better half, we became an FDA approved food manufacturer. That took at least a year. Jump through all the hoops to, from a food safety perspective and all of that to, infant foods is one of the highest regulated products, as it should be, right?
Wait, what does that mean?
Just like
I know
from a food safety
obvious,
perspective, it's sort of like, they're one of the most it's a very risky product, right? Because in infants' health, right, their immune system, what they can tolerate. So it's a lot harder to pass through anything, the health and safety checks you're right, all the auditing and all that kind of stuff. Because even getting insurance is, I won't bore you with that kind of stuff, but they're we don't do that.
Many things. Yeah,
that's baby food, right? So Kendall and I started in commercial kitchen. We launched with 20 meals instead of 3. Had we kind of gone to scale, we made the first 100,000 meals by hand, like lugging in 50 pounds of carrots, like very much like exactly what you think it is. Like when it's avocado day, like scooping out 100 avocados. And the funniest part about those days was, you'd have to buy the 100 avocados and you'd tell them, I need them to be ripe. Okay. Well, sometimes you don't get them ripe. And so Kendall would like put them in a paper bag, just try to speed ripen them. And then sometimes those days where you had to get the less than ripe avocado scooping, it was like, anyway.
Yeah, no, that's very laborious.
And so we hand steamed, chopped, roasted, all the things. And then had an immersion blender. So I would stand on a chair because my immersion blender was like 4 feet long. And I had like the best arm muscles of my life because I was like up on a chair. Like, anyway, it was pretty crazy. So, and then we hand filled these suckers. And anyway, it was an incredible time because we really got to know our product. We could iterate. We could know like, okay, when that one freezes, when that one goes through the freeze thaw process, it gets a little watery. So let's thicken this one. And anyway, and we could try out new meals really easily. So versus at a co-manufacturing partner, they're going to say, well, you can try a new meal, but you're going to have to get the packaging that's going to take you, 12 weeks to create. And then you're going to have to make at least 30,000 of them. So the price, the cost of trying things at scale is a bit more challenging. Anyway, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole of baby food production, but
no, it's really interesting to learn about and to think about. So with developing the frozen meals, was that something that you were like, the market, this doesn't really exist in the marketplace, so let's do this and get away from like the pouches? Like, what was that?
That's right. Yeah. So, well, for a lot of reasons, we wanted it to be fresh. One, that the texture and the flavor and the quality is just different. There's a reason why a third of parents are making their own baby food. Part of it is that they just love it, right? But
Yeah.
part of it is because they just don't want, the shelf stable meals or, the fruit heavy pouches. And so they take it on themselves. So our target customer is just as much that parent who's like, oh my God, thank you so much. I did this all with my first baby and now I don't have the time to do it again. They're overwhelmed, but they don't want to, rely on the store bought food as much. And so, so we made the meals fresh. We immediately froze them, and then we would ship them to. We still do. We ship to customers' doorsteps in a like compostable cooler box with dry ice. So we really kind of nailed all of that operations down that for several months, so that as we've scaled nationally, we're very successfully shipping frozen meals around the country and making sure they arrive frozen.
Yeah. And
Which
I
is
love
important.
that. That's so nice to have because I feel like there's such a preciousness when it's your baby, and you want them to eat well. Like when my daughter, when she was ready to start with solids, my mom would be like, why are you? And I was also like making everything on my own because I wanted to. I love
Mm-hmm.
cooking and like I wanted to I had the time and at the but yeah. So I had the time. I wanted to go through that process, and my mom would be like, "Why don't you just go to the store and like grab a jar?" And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"No." Like I remember it felt like insulting. It seemed disgusting to me. Like I don't want to like call out any brands, but like there was something about just like walking down the aisle and like seeing like a jar of this food, and I'm like thinking about
Mm-hmm.
like the production of it all.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
but
just like if you don't
now,
want to eat it, if you don't
yes,
think it tastes good, like
yeah.
how are we developing them to like, the different textures and real like food that hasn't been so processed that it's just sort of homogenous and it's all the same texture, right? So you're
Mhm.
not helping them be exposed to as many, flavors and textures. Yeah.
Yeah. But then as she's gotten a little older, it's like it's so easy to just like grab the pouch. So
Yeah.
talk to me about um when you're grocery shopping. Like what do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be aware of label wise? Like what are the
Yeah.
like how are they tricking us? Like what do we want to look for? Um all that stuff.
Yeah. So great question. First, I think while this might not be on every label, like we don't have it on our labeling, but I would head to the Clean Label Project's website to see
Hmm.
who has become a Purity Award winner. So this is an independent testing for heavy metals, but not just heavy metals. There's 400 different contaminants. It's all third party, so it's not like a company sending in their own test results. And they certify certain brands, certain products as a Purity Award winner. So thinking about heavy metals right now, it's just a huge, unfortunately, it's a huge issue. There's some companies that are doing it well and some that have ignored it for quite a long time and there's toxic levels of heavy metals in many of these foods. So Clean Label Project is a great first step, and they have both direct to consumer companies like Squarebaby as well as brands that you'd find in the grocery store. Um, I like to flip over and look at a nutrition facts panel right away, right?
Mhm.
So there's always, and this is not to call anyone out. I just happen to have a bunch of pouches here for
Great.
right. So you can look at any front of a pouch or a product and you can see what they've named it and you can see what the pictures are, right? Like, okay, I
Mhm.
see mango, banana, broccoli, and kale. And actually, what I like about Peter Rabbit, to give them a good shout out, is that they call it banana, mango, broccoli, and kale. And this has actually become a thing in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, because there have been lawsuits against certain brands, not saying that they were one of them, for calling the food, basically calling out, like if this were called broccoli, kale, banana, and mango, it makes it seem like there's more broccoli and kale. So I started to see some of these more major brands actually list them in accordance to what the actual ingredient statement is, which is true. It's banana, mango, broccoli, and kale. But then I look at the sugar content. That's my first thing that I look at. So there's not that much broccoli and kale in it because there's 14 grams of sugar. It's not added sugar, it's fruit sugar, and fruit is not bad, right? Like I never ever want to demonize fruit. We have fruit in all of our balanced meals. It's just how much, right? So at 14 grams of sugar, here's a good way to think about it. So a Coca-Cola has 3.25 grams of sugar per ounce. So obviously a can of Coke is much bigger than a pouch of baby food, right? But many of these baby foods have 3 to 4 grams of sugar per ounce, which makes it as sweet as Coca-Cola. So just thinking about, if it's over 10 grams of sugar, it's really fruit heavy. Again, not that fruit is bad. It's just thinking about what's in their overall diet. And also if everything you give them is really fruit forward, which a lot of these pouches it's just kind of the name of their game. A lot of them are very, very fruit forward. Shout out to Serenity Kids, who has leaned on healthy fats and protein and vegetables. But other than that, most of the rest of them are very, very sweet. Again, fruit's awesome, brings a lot of nutrition. But when you think about palate development and we think about them sucking down a very sweet pouch all the time, it's sort of like why we want to give our kids yogurt, but maybe not, a highly sweetened yogurt every time. Treats are fine, little sweet moments, totally fine. But just thinking about how much sweetness they're taking in and what that's also leaving out. So it's leaving out protein, it's leaving out whole grains, it's leaving out healthy fats, it's leaving out, bitter, earthy, savory flavors, right? Herbs and spices. So looking at the overall diet, I think is really important. But again, when you're asking me about the grocery aisle, I think it's just flip over the pouch or the container, and I would look at, is there a little bit of protein, a little bit of healthy fat? Awesome. Fat in general. No added sugar for babies and toddlers up to 2. That's not a huge issue in baby food. It starts to become a thing in more snacky items. And just the sugar level in general. Like I like to stick at 7 grams or less, or 5 is nice, but not be so prescriptive again with all things, even though what we created at Squarebaby is this 100% daily nutrition meal system, right? So this is I tell you that I wanted to make a foolproof solution, and everything about Square is that every meal is balanced, like down to the gram. In fact, when a R&D person is like, oh, you know what you could do to improve like you could add more apple. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that, because I want my meal to be balanced, right? So every one of our meals is veggie forward, veggie first. That's a promise that we have. And then we created the system so that any 2 to 3 of our meals is 100% of their daily veggies, fruits, grains, and protein. So that a parent doesn't have to flip over a nutrition facts or try to decode what's really in your meal. It's just, they're all balanced, right?
Yeah.
But I think even though we have a very, in some ways, prescriptive way in which we build our meals, obviously as a parent, like don't feel mom shame or parent shame at all for giving them the pouch in the car when they're like crying. Totally been that, like we called them squeezy fruits in our house when they were little, and it was like a treat, right? It was just like it was a fun thing to have, and that's okay. But I think thinking about infant nutrition and palate development, you want to think about spoon feeding and balanced nutrition and all the things. But again, don't beat yourself up if you need the grocery store aisle and you're giving your kid a pouch here and there.
Yeah. Okay. So when you are going to start solid with your baby, so my son now, he is almost 5 months, and I can't remember how old I did it for my daughter. But now like they're starting to say you can do 4 to 6 months instead of 6 months. We're starting him on the baby cereal, and it's been about a week now. So I'm like, okay, like it's probably time to like try to introduce something. Like what is your suggestions and thoughts around just like that whole process, and like
Mm-hmm.
Baby food, baby leaning. What
Oh,
is it called?
baby led weaning.
Baby led
Yeah.
leaning. I didn't do that. I just
Yeah.
went right with
Yeah.
puree. So can you talk about
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
difference between the two and just give us a
Totally.
little lesson?
Yeah. I think again, this is like a broken record moment, but every baby, you know, they're going to be ready for things when they're ready for things. And whether one baby's ready at 4 or 5 months and another is ready at 6 or 7 months, like listening to your baby's cues, making sure they've met some of the milestones. Generally, they've doubled their birth weight. They can hold their head up. They can sit in like a little high chair or bumbo chair kind of thing. They can move food to the back of their mouth. They show interest in food. I mean, we see this in like 1,000 different blogs, right? So just making sure that they seem ready. Obviously, talk to your pediatrician too about the readiness in the early phases. And I'll get to the baby led weaning thing too. Thinking about allergen introduction. So 4 to 6 months is a critical window to start introducing allergens. So your baby might not be ready for purees at 4 months, but thinking about ways to incorporate it into an infant cereal or even breast milk or formula is helpful, right? Just little powders.
Right.
So they're right.
Ready, set, go. Is that
Ready, set, food. Yeah.
Ready, set, food.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a great example of a way to add allergens into breast milk or formula. And they have I know their founder and CEO very well. They're a great company with a lot of research behind them. And anyway, so that's a great thing to think about in those really early months before they're ready for solids. And then as far as baby led weaning versus purees, this has become sort of the fight of the decade, I think, between parents, or just the like, which way are you doing it? And this is right, or this worked for us and you should do it this way. And it's, I think, a combination, or what works for your baby, right? Like even my two little ones were completely different in the way they took to solids. My first one opened his mouth like a little bird for every single bite I put into his mouth. And I was like, this is so fun. I am winning at this. He's eating everything. And then my second, who's now a total chef, loves food. They both love food, but he turned his head for 2 weeks and was just like, I'm not. And he was totally like, developmentally ready. He just wasn't, and I was like in tears. I remember coming home from work then and just being like, oh my God, like I just was so looking forward to this moment being great. And you're spitting it out. So just, chilling out about all of the rules we can give ourselves about what success looks like, and giving ourselves grace and having fun, having good energy. I think that passes along too. It could have been that I was arriving home from work very stressed out and trying to enjoy this moment, but really like, carrying on that, or
really
that stress to my infant, right? Yeah.
Wait, what's like what do you like to do to reset yourself and decompress, like before you like get into the house? Do you do anything so you don't bring in that sort of like energy?
Good question. Well, now I work from home. When I had both of my kids, I had, jobs with commutes and babies in daycare where you're like, pumping before you go to, it's just all the things, all the bottles, all the labeling, it was, I was so overwhelmed. I don't think I did anything other than like the commute home or just like walk in and be like, here, can you hold him for a minute? I tried to work out here and there. I just remember those very early months just being like, I didn't feel like I had a moment, right? It was just like on the resting and make a meal and the dishes and the cleaning the bottles and but now I'll say like, I really enjoy just like getting outside, going for a walk or a hike. Even if I'm like on a call, I know it's sad. Like I get shamed that way when I'm going for a walk and I'm on my phone or something. And I just want to be like, you know what, sir, I'm running a company. And this is the only way that I could go out for a walk, as if I was also on a call. And I enjoy cooking. I enjoy Netflix like everyone else, like just zoning out. I really like having friends over. So I will do a lot of last minute, like, come on over for dinner, taco night, whatever. It just helps me to like take my work hat off for a minute and just, be me. And I don't know if that answers your question, but a glass of wine doesn't hurt either.
Yeah. And then for those early years, what's like your view on screen time at the table, or like activities, or like, or do we want to sit across from each other and just stare at each other? Like, what's the environment?
Totally. I think it's so important. And again, I don't want to say something that's so like shamey, like if you do this, like you're, we should all feel bad about it. There are moments, right, where it's like whatever works, right, to get through. But in general, I think mealtime should be sacred, and it's such a that is one of those things that I think is so lost in this, day and age. It's like something old people say, this day and age. But it's so true. And as they grow up, it becomes harder and harder. They have all these activities. They're running from here to there. Like maybe it's, my son doesn't get home from volleyball until like 9:30 sometimes. And like he's eating a second dinner then. But finding time, maybe that's why I love like having people over for dinner, because it just slows people down and it focuses on the people and the food, and not a screen, not TV, not video games. I think we think just about healthy eating habits and relationship with food in general, sitting down and enjoying a meal, not rushing through. And I'm totally guilty of this. Like I eat standing up so much. Like my lunches are usually like, I don't know, egg bites, microwave, shoved down as fast as I can, back to my screen. I don't always follow my own advice during the daytime. But finding the moments to sit down at a table, slowing down the meal time so there is conversation and you do experience the food. Like just think about how we can shovel things down and not even like register it. We don't register that we're full. We don't register that we enjoyed it. It was just like I'm eating to like mark that off my list and get on to the next thing. It's sort of like taking your kids to soccer practice and giving them a bar and, like just eating to fuel. I think it's so important to protect mealtime, really. And that's why we were so adamant that our infant meals would be in a container and not a pouch. And pouches have their convenience, absolutely, but to encourage spoon feeding and to be in a container that's much more a mealtime thing versus a kind of a self-serving snack, I think was something that was important to us.
I love that.
The sustainability. Yeah.
More collaborative.
Yeah.
Between the mom and baby. So I end every episode with just advice for new moms, whatever comes up for you. Just like, don't think too hard on it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I always say this, and I think that I learn it more and more every year to just trust your gut. I mean, mom's intuition is so strong. I think it's so easy to hear everybody else's advice, to hear what has worked for other people, and just to not override what feels right for you and your family, and to give yourself grace and to have fun as much as you can. Like slow down, turn the music on, dance, the dance party in your kitchen, chill out. It's all going to be okay. They're going to learn to use the potty at some point. They're going to learn to do the things, right? Like it's just too easy for us to compare and to be hard on ourselves for working outside the home, hard on ourselves for not, for walking away from that job. There's a thousand things that moms especially feel the weight of doing things right or wrong. And I think it's like, whatever works for you, and just find the joy, because that's what's important to your kiddos, is that they, feel the joy. And I think that just plays out in so many things in their lives.
Totally. I second the dance party in the kitchen. That's like our favorite thing to do after dinner time. Katie, thank you so much. This has been so
Yeah.
awesome. And then do you want to shout out socials, your website, like whatever you want to do to
Yeah.
come out?
You got it. Yep. So our website is squarebaby.com and all of our social media is at squarebabyfood.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And it was so great to hear more about you and Squarebaby.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And then just wait.